people who talked about Auschwitz, of course, but there were so many other camps. And Bergen-Belsen was surely one of the worst. They didn't need to have gas chambers there.
But all these people, and there were 60,000 people in the area of 3 football fields.
Even as a name of a place, Belsen is a very complex phenomenon.
No food, no water. There was no water there.
The group I was with were instructed to go into any prisoner of war camp that they could find. Belsen was the last one that we came into.
And he knew what's waiting for him. What you will see here, you never seen in your life. Be prepared.
The bodies, when they tip them out of these trucks, fall over and move as though they were moving into the pit. One of the troops came up to me and said I was crazy doing the drawings, that no one would believe them. So every time I drew something, I would take a photograph.
But for the photos and the language, who will see them? There is no world out there.
I had typhus, I had cholera, I had diphtheria, I had scarlet fever.
I was dancing with angels up there. It took a minute to also, just not to wake up. Liberation. I mean, thinking of Ellen, the sequence got somehow crawling to him and looking at him, and he's the angel from heaven.
Hi everyone, welcome to SCREN-SPACE. I'm Simon Foster. In April of this year, the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp allowed for a moment of profound global reflection. The Australian documentary Remember Belsen looks at the horrors of the Holocaust through the eyes of the survivors, but also through the artists who recorded those first glimpses inside, as one British officer calls it in the film, a fine hell. It's screening at the Randwick Ritz on June 25, and we're joined by its director, Frank Shields. Frank, thank you so much for taking some time out to talk to us.
No problem.
I want to start in maybe an odd place. The title of your documentary almost sounds like a demand. You didn't choose the more passive remembering Belsen, but instead you insist your audience remember, and I guess more precisely, never forget. Was that deliberate?
Yeah, because in a way, I mean, it's what's happening right now in the States or anything like that. It's just remember Belsen. So really, it was just, yeah, it was really, whenever you're seeing really bad stuff out there, well, you say, well, just remember Belsen, because you don't get any worse than that.
It certainly sounds like a call to action, like a, yes, this is where we are now. So yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Did you become aware of the stored away Belsen films way back in '84 when the film cans were first discovered, first revealed, or did the idea for the film start to coalesce later on?
No, like actually a couple of my films, actually, it started out by reading an article in the newspaper, and they just they just discovered all these cans of archive footage that they shot in 1945. And what they did when they actually did shoot it, Hitchcock actually made a film, but it was called like an F-134, something like that. Mm. And once the Americans and the British looked at it, they said, we can't show this to anyone right now because the war, everyone's just getting over the war, and all they needed was, especially Germany, who they really needed now as allies. Mm. I mean, the enemy one day, after that, we got a new adversary, which is Russia, straight away. So they didn't want to rub their noses in it, and they sort of put it away in a vault, and they forgot about it.
I was going to say,
And
it seems extraordinary that it was away for this length of time.
Just forgot about it.
Oh,
And 40 years later, probably some archivist or anything are just going through their vault, and there's all these stacks of cans, rusty old cans, and there it was. Just incredible. So as soon as I saw it, well, I didn't see it. I read the article, and it was about one of these guys, one of the cameramen actually, who moved to immigrated to Australia. So that's how it all started. So as soon as I said, this is pretty, it just something triggered. And I went to London, had a look at the footage, and as soon as I saw it, I don't think there was anything ever shot through the lens of a camera in the 20th century that actually matches this stuff.
No.
So off I went.
What you mentioned that it's like some of your other films, it was discovered through a news article. Are you referring to The Breaker, to the Breaker Morant film earlier on as well?
Well, The Breaker actually was, I'd actually been coming down from Rhodesia. I'd just been all over the world, just all sorts of stuff. I won't bother with all of it now. And I'd got a lift. There was sort of, there wasn't much traffic going between Salisbury and North or South Africa. So I got a lift with these guys who actually were culling wild stuff in the bush up there. So anyway, I got a lift and they went across the border, and all this Morant territory was just across the border in northern Transvaal. So anyway, they dropped me off, and I really just all I had was clothes, jacket, and a little dilly bag. That was always I traveled with, change of clothes.
Sure.
And anyway, I looked up there and I said, well, and I just saw a cemetery. I'm telling you, I don't know why I walked down that road. So I walked towards to this cemetery, and there was like a sort of little rotunda at the side of it, and they had like a day book or something, like a message, a directory of all the graves that were there. So I'm just going through it, and I remembered this. For some reason, this story that I read in the Australian Post. They used to have a page on history.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd read it years ago. In my head, going through this book, there's his name, Morant and Hancock. And I've gone, can't be. Went and saw the grave, and it was all in terrific condition. I mean, there was little flowers growing out of it. So someone had been looking after it.
Sure.
And everything around it is all falling over. And I'm going, hello, So I roused the thing and the cat, of course, and I went home, and I was just sitting watching TV one night, and I was a bit restless because I'd been away for years. And anyway, I'm watching this doco on TV. I think it was Bergen-Belsen, one of the 60 of them that's been made. And I went, I can make a better film than that. True story. And then I said, that grave I just found in South Africa.
So what year was this? What year was this?
1970, 71.
Yep.
So anyway, I went down to the library and started searching, and then did research. I went into the Mitchell Library in the city, and there all start to come out. And once you get into that stuff, it takes off. So then I went up to see. Then I started putting it all together. And I said, "This is great stuff for a movie." So at the time, they just started a thing called the Australian Development Board, which went on to become Film Australia and all that. It was the first year of it. And I went up there, and there was a guy called Tom Stacey. I remember him. And I've gone up there, and he said, "Yes, what do you hope for?" And I went in the story about Morant. This and that and that. This is a great story. And he says, "Who the F are you?" True. And I said, "No, but I got this great story." He said, "Have you ever made a film before?" And I went, "No." So I got the bum's rush. Well, in a kind way. It was just, he said, "Mate, you can't make a film. You don't know what you're doing." So when, in a way, if I cut it short, I went downstairs, bought a Bolex, and went back to South Africa.
And did it all yourself.
And 2 years later, I come back with a film.
And win the prize at the Sydney Film Festival. Yeah, that's an extraordinary story.
Yeah.
I guess the importance of the location of the Morant grave leads me to the question: did you ever visit the sites of Belsen or any of the concentration camp sites? Have you been to that part of the world?
No, I went back. In fact, I'd done a film, Australian film, for Hostage, my first feature.
Which I'll get to later, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because it was integral to my love of Australian cinema. And I've seen it many times. So thank you for that.
So I shot part of that actually in Munich.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was, in a way, I think we were probably the first Australian crew that actually, because of my head's department and all that, went across with me on that. And it was backed by roadshows, so they had, what was good, you get a lot of confidence because you're just with good people. And I never ever felt, that I can't do anything like that. When you're dealing with people, if one didn't know something, they were there. I had a good line producer, Basil Appleby, who'd done about 100 films in the UK. So, I had people around me, and it wasn't a big budget, but it was enough to do it well and never had a problem.
And it was a shared production, wasn't it? It was a co-production with Germany, wasn't it? Was it?
No.
It was all Australian dollars.
All Australian dollars.
Yeah.
This is an early 10BA.
Yep. And that allowed you to go to the campsites?
Well, what I did, I actually went later on. Of course, I've got to know a few of the filmmakers and all that in Munich. So when I decided I'm going to make the film, I brought back, saw the footage, and we went over it. So I did go back, and I got just a cameraman and an assistant and a van, and then we drove up to Belsen. And I shot there on, I think it was like one of actually near the anniversary, because they had a lot of flowers and stuff all like that. But everything was quite good, actually, in a way that it was just on the cusp, and everything was brown. There was no color and all that. So I covered it with photographs, luckily enough, and then I actually shot the hell out of the place. And I think the German filmmaker, they'd had enough by the end of the day. I mean, they just shot too much, and they were getting a little bit jittery.
Sure.
So, and then I went back and I was ready to sort of start cutting it and start getting interest in it to sort of get some money. And then PBS, President Reagan had gone over to Germany, and for some reason they changed his schedule and he went to see Belsen. And of course PBS jumped on it.
Yep.
And of course I was rubbed out in a minute. And this is why it's taken me so long to do it.
I'm so glad you stuck.
Anyway, so yes, so I'd been back, and I've gone all over the area and things like that. But it's very interesting. You can keep going on with it, even what I've shot there. I mean, that tells all the story, but in depth, if you want to get into in depth, and also there was a lot of Aussies there, so some of them, sort of marquee names.
Sure.
And they didn't even get a shoe in. So it's a good story all over.
Tell me about the experience of hearing the survivors tell their story, of being there as these remarkable people relate their most horrific memories to you. Is there a quality or is there a character trait that comes to mind when you recall their willingness to speak to you?
No, I thought, no, they were quite open about it. It's like there was Olga, who, in fact, she just passed away actually late last year.
I'm sorry to hear
and no, I sat with her, and they want to tell it. She wanted to tell it, and now and again she thought we'd have a bit of a relaxation, and then she'd been talking, and she just wanted to keep going, and then now and again, because she was very prim and proper, she's a very lady.
Yes.
And then it got into her head. Then she said, "They stole my youth." Just yelled out, and I'd never seen it flustering like that. So it's And also where it gets to me, well, why would I do this? I mean, I'm not Jewish, but I've just told you that I've been all over the world and sailed the 7 seas and done things that you only dream about as a kid. But I just did it naturally. And to see that a person, especially there's another woman called Helen Shon down in Melbourne, that they were actually, these were prisoners. They had no say. They would just be wrapped out of their houses and things like that. Well, for someone that's been so free in his life, and even as I am today, yeah, that is the difference. And then I tried to think about being how they existed, how they got through this stuff. You know, dragged out, put into cattle cars, going to Auschwitz, which was usually the first stop, and they put them in lines, and the ones that are sort of young and can get work and things like that. You go over there, and as Alan said, the one, she's just carrying a little niece, a little baby. And the guard says, now you give that baby to that person, which is her mother. You go over there and she'll go somewhere else. Well, they went straight into the oven. I mean, so when they're telling you these stories, I mean, and look at my world, that is the difference, mate.
That is so fascinating that you say that, because I mentioned to you in the email that I wrote to you that I've just over the last, and I mean, I was always, as a kid, a World War II buff, and I have vivid memories of watching the World at War TV documentary series and my mother being very upset by the concentration camp scenes. But it's only in the last 18 months where I've watched Shoah, I've watched Sorrow and the Pity. I saw the documentary at the Sydney Festival that I mentioned to you in the email, and and putting it in that perspective where I've just become aware how lucky I am in the life I lead, and maybe maybe it puts perspective on that in looking how horrible some of these lives were and how they've risen above that. That is a real eye opener for me. I'm glad you said that, because that may have something to do with why and would that be why the Holocaust in general is still fascinating and still holds the public interest, apart from it being the worst mass murder in mankind's history that only happened 80 odd years ago? Is it just getting a glimpse inside how awful we can be that maybe helps us keep it together?
I can't answer all that. That stuff's way beyond me. But you know what? It's inside you. You just whatever. I mean, when they call the Holocaust, actually Belsen was very pivotal there, because Belsen was also really just a little known camp. I mean, it was a transit camp. They used Jews there, and they trade them off for prisoners, German prisoners, somewhere else. So they trade them off. But once the Allies started invading Germany and coming towards the concentration camps, well, they just emptied them out, because the Germans never left anything to show what they knew what was going. Well, they knew what was going on. But anyway, so all these people from Auschwitz, and several of my people all come from Auschwitz into the camp. And within, that's like say they got there in January. By March, I mean, there was went from 6,000 people to 60,000. But then you can't feed that many people that quick. You've got typhus had broken out in the camp, so that's an added. And they were just dying like flies.
Yeah.
And in the end of the day is the Germans really didn't want that to go out into the population. And that's why they allowed the British permission to go in there. But there was a guy, actually it was Hitchcock's producer, who now was the Minister of Information over there in London. And as soon as he heard they were going to go into Belsen, they had permission to go in. They had a cameraman there the next day.
Wow.
They had a media scrum, a Life magazine photographer, BBC. It was just covered at every angle, because this was the evidence this guy wanted about what was happening. And it was all in Belsen. Incredible. And that's the significance of Belsen.
Your film also examines how the media of the day, whether it's Alan Moore's paintings or Irvin Abadi's drawings or Mike Lewis's lens, they revealed the extent of the Nazi atrocities. I really think Alan Moore's Blind Man in Belsen is just this masterpiece of despair. These are some of the most important artistic undertakings of the last 100 years, surely.
Yeah, well, when you look at all the people of Belsen, all those things that make up a lot of the film, and I focus a lot on, well, war artists get a big, because there's women and men war artists that covered it, and I'll make a feature of that. But don't forget, everyone that went into the camp in the media scrum, they're all artists, photographers. Life magazine changed him. He just wanted, he said, how can I arrange dead people to make a nice, a nice shot in a way? He said that was it for him.
Wow.
And you had broadcasters, you just every form of artistry to get all that stuff together to mold it into something, which of course what they did, or they started. Hitchcock made that one, just edited some stuff together.
Sure.
And they just said they couldn't show it to the people just then.
Well, you're now part of that group, aren't you? You use your tools as an artist and as a storyteller to tell this story of the past. Were you fully aware of the responsibility to Helen and Olga and Hetty and Alan and to history that you undertook when you began the project? What's been your journey on this film?
I think I'm sort of in a way they call me a maverick filmmaker, because I just go out there and do it. And the reasons why I do it, I just explained it. It got to me. I went, oh, you see this stuff. And you can't do that to people. It's just, and you have to, why I actually made it as confrontation as it is because it did that purpose. Not because I want to use that bad scene and that bad scene, but it was just, you had to show it in its context. I mean, that's how bad it was. I mean, when the British, in fact, there's even an American guy come in. Well, it's a long part of the story there where he's come in from where one of these three trains, which I have in it, what they tried to do is get him out of the camp just before they took it over. And there was about 2,500 in each one to take him to different other camps. I mean, the Germans never stopped. But the trouble is, by that time, it was all haywire. The trains, only of them, one got to its destination, the other one became the lost train. Ended up 2 days in Berlin while it was under fire. I mean, can you just imagine all these people cooped up in these cattle cars in Berlin station, the Bahnhof there, while it's on fire, the place, So, and it's hard, as another filmmaker, as my feature maker, doing drama, I mean, that'd be an unbelievable scene to do.
Of course,
but I couldn't. Yeah, all I could do was just say it in a doco. So,
as we record this, the headlines, and you've touched on this briefly, that the headlines are filled with news about racial and socio-political division everywhere, and there's ultra-right authoritarianism rising up and anti-Semitism rising up. It's only 80 years ago that all this happened. It couldn't possibly happen again, could it? Or could it?
In the way they did it, I mean, I'm absolutely amazed, and I haven't gone right into it. But you know the number of concentration camps they had in Germany and in the other countries just right around it. I mean, there must have been a couple of hundred of them. I mean,
on a scale like mankind had never seen before. Yeah.
No, it was just a madman running the whole show. But the other thing that actually gets me is the people, the willing to do it. And if you're looking at the film, the guards are emotionless. There's nothing. They're loading thousands of people, hundreds of people onto wagons and all that, dragging them off. There is no emotion whatsoever. I mean, they're the people. That amazes me. And these are the people that do this stuff.
Yeah.
The madman's up here, like the conductor.
Yep.
But these people are all in the band.
The
These are
ordinary
all in the
people.
orchestra.
Yeah.
They are. And they're doing this, and they don't even think about it. Or so that's the stuff I can't work out.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like, you know, go on.
It's such an honor to talk with you. I've got to wrap this up, but it's such an honor to talk with you, Frank. As I mentioned, your films, The Surfer. I was working at CBS Fox when The Surfer came out there, and especially Hostage were just integral to me falling in love with movies. They're right in the mix of it. So thank you so much for those films, and certainly thank you so much for Remember Belsen. Good luck with the screening this coming Wednesday night, June 25 at the Randwick Ritz. Lovely to talk to you, sir. All the very best.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.